It's wonderful to see people from all over the world here. From Palestine and Israel, from Australia, in the southern hemisphere to the northern hemisphere. Australia to America, from Ireland to California. South Africa to Norway. Even if we go through a dark tunnel, we come out on the other side. And our Mississippi is still flowing here. These trees are really assaulted by these creepers. So my conscience is a little lighter now that one of the nature authority people here for the Sea of Galilee was here 2 days ago, and I brought this to his attention. So maybe something will be done, or maybe the creepers will be let run their course. More creepers here. See, that tree is really suffering now. All those branches are done. A marriage made in heaven. This concept is, I'm not sure if it ever had an expression like this before, but it's in the book of Tobit. It's in our reading today. Marriage made in heaven. What an interesting concept. Hey, pity those, put those. Well, there's metal legs, so I guess they'll survive the water for a while. Somebody brought them down here to the water, so I guess people could put their feet in the water while they're talking and chatting. So if we look up here, behind this first bush here in the center of the screen, up on the hills, you have Safat, this ancient, old town, centuries-old town of Jewish thought and culture. We know that at least in the 16th century, in the 1500s, it grew a lot with Jewish people who were expelled from Spain. There's a Spanish synagogue there from the 1600s. But it's just a reference point, because just beyond that, a reference point for our story today, north of there is the town where Tobit is from. And in the first exile, when the northern kingdom was exiled, that's the setting for Tobit, who lived in a village north of there, to be taken to Mesopotamia in the exile. So that's the setting of the work. So we're talking about 8th century, and then we have the 7th century. Then we have the book itself is considered as written in the 4th century, 3rd, 4th century before Christ. So that's the setting then, and the time and the geography. And in that book we have this concept now where we're reading today. It's actually a selection of little passages from 3 chapters, 6, 7, and 8 of the book of Tobit. And we have this extraordinary vision of marriage filled with piety, filled with a providential view of life, filled with great respect, anchored in families, in family bonds. Even yesterday I was talking with a person, and it just came out in the conversation, you know, they shacked up for 2 years here nearby, and then because of certain circumstances she had to go back to her own country. And the way people do things today, you know, the way it's very fragile, very unprepared, very spontaneous, very much a response to primary instincts and feelings, and how human relationships of this nature need a great preparation and a solid framework and context for the good of the couple. As I could see, this young man it's very sad that this relationship is broken. The relationships need to be well prepared. And there we see another concept, very powerful concept, that the marriage is prepared according to the Mosaic law. And the Mosaic law wasn't perfect, but it had a major framework for the society, major framework of respect, a framework of continuity, of societal support, of boundaries. Sorry, I stopped talking because those two guys were asleep there, camping out without a tent. A marriage made in heaven with strong family support from both sides. How much a family, how well it can be built, how challenging for today. And the great prayer of Tobit and Sarah before they consume their marriage, before it's consummated. It really makes us ponder a little bit how much we need to help and support families and prepare people to enter into a relationship for life. And other ideologies have come into this field today, and so it becomes even more challenging how to accomplish this. And everybody is really involved. Even a wise comment from a grandmother, from a grandfather, from a neighbor, from a friend, from a schoolmate. It's amazing how a wise comment said in love communicates a lot of understanding for life. I would never forget a comment that one of our volunteers once made of how, well, actually two different people that were here. There was both commented how I know that in one case it was definitely a grandmother. This was a European person, and she said to her granddaughter, "You should be preparing for marriage. It's good that you have work, that you have a career, but prepare for marriage. It's much more important than a career, to prepare for marriage." And there's so much preparation for a career, you have grade school and high school, and that's not enough at all, so you need to go to college, and then you need to do internships and gain experience and have connections to get a good job, to do well in life. A lot of preparation, a lot of training, a lot of updating courses are done. And we think what's done for marriage, and then we have all the training that the media gives in romantic stories that are fleeting for a moment, and they break up and another romantic story follows another one. And I would think this young man yesterday also communicated in a way, his frustration. But because of this, I'm sure he has also learned a few very hard lessons, the hard knocks of life. And we could say in a way also that society, because of the breakdown of the social structures, then he has been, in a certain sense, handed a very raw deal from around him, and how to understand and help people to make the next step, to repair any damage and to rebuild. Big challenges, and we're all called to be involved. It's worth reading the book of Tobit from this point of view. And okay, it's a different world. Nobody in this world today is advocating that somebody has to marry the 7 brothers. If one dies and another brother needs to marry in order to give progeny to his brother. This type of worldview is obviously we're way gone beyond this. But there are so many interesting points here about the spirituality of marriage. I would say it's very much the understanding of marriage that was lived by the pious people at the time of Jesus. It would be a major work communicating the biblical truth and goal of marriage, and the clear commitment as they get married to persevere together to a ripe old age. Last weekend we had a couple here at the Women's Encounter, and in July they'll be celebrating 60 years of marriage. And also yesterday there was a Jewish couple that I spoke with. They were visiting among many others who were visiting, and they also have a very long life of marriage. I don't know the number of years, but it's way over 50 years married. I remember doing that mental calculation. It's probably 53 or 54 years of marriage. And when we see the amount of challenges to perseverance in marriage today, then something needs to be done to help our society to renew. And every one of us are called to action here. I would say all of us in education and spiritual leadership, with every person, a neighbor saying something. I could imagine this kid I spoke with yesterday saying a great word to a younger brother, to a friend, to a co-worker where he works, and it could make people ponder and think and reflect on the seriousness of what happens when people get married, the significance for their whole lives, the deep footprint this leaves in their lives, the influence it has in their lives. So read the book of Tobit, and because of this also I added 2 links for you. And we're reading the book of Tobit through Saturday. Today is Thursday, so Friday and Saturday. And I added 2 links about marriage. And one of them is very schematic, and the other is very inspirational. The schematic one is from the Catechism of the Catholic Church, and that gathers so much scriptural resources to ponder marriage, arranged in a very systematic way. And actually the link doesn't start at the very first number, but when you go to the link you can see that you can go to the one before or the one after, and that allows you then to continue scrolling, or you can just go into the original index and see all the topics. And there's quite a systematic treatment of many aspects of marriage, and it's all gleaned from scripture and the experience of the saints and great teachers of faith in the church for 2,000 years, on top of all of living from, rooted in the scriptural understanding of marriage, God's revelation about marriage. Marriage is such a treasure, such a precious treasure. And it's a treasure in many ways. It's actually a treasure to reveal God's love. God reveals himself as spouse of the chosen people, spouse of the church. And the incarnate word is the groom. So then marriage becomes also really an essential key to understanding the mystery of God. You know, we're very impressed by the martyrs, and today we have extraordinary martyrs from Africa, from Uganda. It's a very cruel king, very depraved king, and these first Christians in his area are living a different style of life, and they're his pages. And this guy Charlie is the most famous and capable athlete in the country, and he's in charge of the pages of the king, all the boys working in the king's palace. And this is not too long ago. I don't think it's even 2 centuries, in the late 1800s, century and a half ago. And then a wicked counselor advises the king that if these Christians spread in the kingdom, it will do detriment to the kingdom, because he won't be able to go and pillage, because these Christians are turning out that they don't want to do warfare. They want to help others, but they don't want to pillage and plunder. And they don't want to do this abusive sexual lifestyle that the king is following, which is in total disregard of marriage and the creation of man and woman. And so they're martyred. And they're martyred with great courage, with great joy, with great simplicity, with great oneness of heart. And so martyrs give extraordinary witness, and we're fascinated by their courage, their determination. But I would say a couple that's 60 years married is a great witness, an extraordinary witness, especially in our times. Like 60 years takes us back to 1960. And what the wrecking ball that hit marriage since 1960 is amazing, you know. So people today who are 60 years married give us a great witness. And I'm sure that there are many of our listeners and participants right now are maybe sorry and feeling sore over major sufferings and issues they've had in their married life. And maybe their marriage has been damaged deeply or broken. And I would say this is not a road without an end. This is not a dead-end street. This is a time of new reflection and pondering and turning to God like Tobit did and Raquel did. And they went through very hard moments. And to raise your prayer to God that your life with all its wounds and hurt can still be filled with the grace of redemption, can still be filled with great experience and mission that will be a light, a new sunrise for a lot of people. A marriage made in heaven. That's where marriage is made. And in the book of Tobit you have such a sense of providence. Such a sense of providence. That God is so loving, so caring, so providing. Even through the worst trials and difficulties. God is so providing, so caring, so loving. And He knows everything. We're in the palm of His hand. And these sufferings can purify us like gold in the fire. Some people go through tremendous torture by opponents of our faith, but we all go through trials that purify us. And this is where then the gospel text comes out so powerfully, you know. To love God with all our heart and all our soul and all our strength, and our neighbor as ourselves. Those bushes have very beautifully formed, don't they? And I think this is a good place. I see our time has run very quickly. So thank you for joining in this morning and chatting about this very important issue for our society. Not just an issue for society, for philosophical thinking. It's a practical thing in our lives. For so many people, so much life is at stake. And then especially for the children of those wonderful marriages. People, God bless you. Be good. Pray for me. Pray for us here. See you later, alligators.